Every Thursday, we're going to just bring it to you with a topic that will help you specify great wine cellars, learn a little bit more wine racks, and all that good stuff. And then, of course, if you're watching and have questions, pop them into the chat, and I will do my best to answer them. Today's topic is, this week's topic is something that we get at a lot in the world of wine cellars. It's how to figure out if you can put glass in your wine room and still keep wine safely. And if so, when you're doing glass, single pane, double pane, triple pane, whatever, what works, how does it work, and all that good stuff. This becomes one of those controversial topics that I get when I go out and do outreach a lot, where folks will literally kind of yell at the rooftop from the rooftops whether they think single pane is appropriate or whether glass is appropriate, etc. So we're going to do our best to break down that topic. I've got the Instagram up on screen. The goal with that is to give you some visuals as I talk. The big thing to think in this topic is when you're worried about glass, when you want to think about glass, is number one, it's possible. You can store wine safely for a long time with glass. You just have to be smart about it, and you have to think about things a little bit differently. So the first thing to consider is frameless. Are you thinking that you can want to do something like this beautiful wine cellar designed by Benchmark Design Studio? So frameless glass, we would say go for it, and we would say be very smart about it. Frameless glass is going to do a couple of things. It's going to make it a little bit more difficult to store wine. Number one, it has no insulation value. So your machine, your cooling unit is going to have to work a whole lot harder in something like that, or a beautiful room like this. Number two, there's cracks, right? You're not sealing up the room very well. So there's going to be heat transfer, moisture transfer, just making it a little bit more difficult to do things right. Now, the one thing that we strive for in long-term wine storage is a 55-degree constant temperature. We strive for about 50% humidity. These things become a little bit harder to do with frameless glass. So what we would recommend is, when you want this kind of beautiful result like you're seeing in some of these images that I'm popping up, is set the expectations with your client a little bit differently. Don't strive for 55 degrees. That's going to be great for Bordeaux's for 20, 30 years. Set the expectation that you might have a wine cellar at 63 degrees, 64 degrees, but nice and constant. And that's going to be really great for that short and midterm storage. So some pretty good wines, but just not something you want for, maybe 30 years, right? So those super high-end, long-term value wines. The frameless glass is also really great for passive wine cellars. And what passive means, if you're unfamiliar with that term, that means you're not actually adding any cooling. You're just doing it as like a visual piece to set aside so you can see the wine and store your everyday drinking stuff, things there for a little bit. When you're not instituting cooling into a wine cellar, you don't have to worry necessarily about the value, the R value of the glass, or if you're losing insulation and all that stuff. Now, if I want to backtrack for just a second, if you're watching this and don't have any idea what I'm talking about and why these things are important, wine, when you're aging it, a couple of things to consider. You want to keep a temperature low, and you want to keep it constant, and you want to keep UV rays out of the way, and you want to keep extra heat sources. So that's why glass becomes problematic a little bit, right? So when you want to specify frameless glass like this that you're seeing from Bearing Glass in this Instagram picture, do it with the expectation that you're only gonna put wine, put decent to good wines for maybe 5, 10, 15 years, and you're gonna get to 63, 64 degrees and not that perfect ideal temperature. The reason people love frameless glass is, as you can see in the pictures that I just showed you, they're beautiful, they're awesome, they're minimalist. They're also quite a bit cheaper in terms of glass installation than what I'm about to show you in the double and triple pane. So now if you look at something like this is done by Joseph and Curtis in the tri-state area. Those guys, in this particular thing, look, I believe it's iron, maybe it's steel. Everything is framed, and you've essentially elevated the potential for storage. And you've done this for a couple of reasons. One, by putting in steel or iron or whatever the material is and framing the glass, you've eliminated the crack, so to speak. So that heat transfer, that moisture transfer, that's going to be proved a challenge overcoming cooling. Number two, you've added and made it a double or triple pane wine glass cellar arrangement. So double and triple pane actually gives you some semblance of insulation value. You might get R7 or R9 if you're lucky, but that's going to make the machine, the cooling, have to work a little less hard. So if you have a collector who wants to put some serious wines down, lay down for decades, and they want glass, this becomes a really good option because it overcomes some of those issues that you would see with the single pane frameless glass. This means, of course, there's an added cost. Frame glass scenarios like this are quite a bit more expensive than frameless. And then maybe aesthetically, I think this one looks great, but some people they don't like the framed look. It's just not as minimal enough for them. So you got some challenges to overcome there. But in terms of long-term storage, you can hit that 55 degrees. You can ensure that you're not losing moisture and all those things that the machine and cooling machine is working to achieve. And then you get results like this. It could be every bit as beautiful, every bit is amazing to a wine cellar, and it's just going to look great. The one thing I will caution in general, though, regardless of if you're doing double and triple pane, you're certainly helping the machine, you're certainly helping the cooling, you're certainly making it as efficient as possible. However, when you're instituting this amount of glass that we're seeing in some of these images on this Instagram feed that I've selected, you are going to at least double, if not triple, the amount of cooling power needed. So it's not nearly as efficient as going and getting 4 walls of high insulation. And that's just something that we might want to accept, right? And that's just something that the client might be okay with, and we'll live with that, right? So it's just a matter of understanding what the client needs and what wines. The one thing that I will say as we kind of wrap up this topic, so we know that we can do single pane, frameless glass. We just want to set the expectation that it might not be perfect for super valuable long-term wines. It might not be perfect for a temperature much below 63, 64 degrees year-round. We know that we can use double and triple pane frame glass at an increased expense to the installation of the project and all that stuff, and realistically get that perfect 55 degrees year-round, get that great long-term storage potential for Bordeaux, Burgundy, Piedmont wines, your Barolos, your allocated Napas, etc. It's going to be a little bit more expensive, but that's okay because a lot of times those types of collectors are spending a boatload of money on their glass or on their wine, so they're going to want to invest in that type of system. But what I'll really leave you with is the brass tacks is when you're specifying wine cellars for really serious wine drinkers, and they want to put tons of valuable wine down in their basement, down in their cellar. Going back to the old school mentality, I say old school, you can still be every bit as beautifully designed in something like this. Going to this type of wine cellar, no glass, R17, R19 in all the different walls, making sure that the wine cellar cooling unit doesn't have to do anything extra in terms of cooling. Things got to work hard enough as it is. Tell your clients that glass is not the friend of the wine cellar in terms of long-term storage. Glass is beautiful, glass is sexy, glass is chic. It just creates some problems and hurdles that we might want to overcome. So regardless of which direction you want to go, there is a right answer. There is a solution. You just have to think about glass in a smart way. Single pane, do it. Just don't go crazy with the expectations in long-term storage. Double and triple pane glass, if they're willing to invest in a bigger machine and a little bit more money on the glass product itself, you can definitely store wine for the long term. And then if you don't want to worry about that stuff, just spend the money on the wine and spend the money on the cool little chandelier and tasting table like you see in this thing, and just don't worry about glass altogether. So I hope if you're watching this was a helpful topic, a helpful insight into how to start to planning on wine cellars. This will be posted all week. So if you have any questions, comments, pop them in on the actual Facebook feed itself when we're not live, and we will do our best to answer them. Other than that, we'll be back live on Instagram on Tuesday at 4:30 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. And again, here on Facebook at 2:30 p.m. next Thursday, Mountain Standard Time, and bringing you great topics and hopefully answering your questions if you have them. Hope you're having a great day. Hope you're staying safe. Be well, and we will talk to you soon for another great topic on wine cellar design and wine cellar planning.